Good morning. So we are here on April 30th recording this podcast this morning. And Amy and I have a friend here, Amanda, who just recently became one of our friends and through a group that we are associated with. So it was all kind of funny how it happened, how the universe does that, just drops people in to your life. And we realized we have a lot of fun just talking about what's going on and just talking and we could probably talk forever, honestly. So the three of us are here this morning going to talk a little bit about what we're in, the current astrology, the current energies, and all the things. So, welcome, Amanda. How are you doing this morning?
I'm good. Thank you, ladies, so much for having me this morning. Join in on your conversations, and we are having so much fun.
Yeah, we are totally. And so just tell us a little bit about yourself, just what you're in right now, what you do, just a little bit about you.
Yeah, so I'm a mom of three. I have an 8-year-old, a 5-year-old, and a 3-year-old. I am also a yoga instructor. And I recently, because of the pandemic, moved from a physical studio to a virtual based studio. And it was an interesting transformation. It also kind of opened the doorway for me to step out of the spiritual closet. And I was able to really start sharing a lot of my intuitive, psychic mediumship gifts and kind of integrate that all in with yoga, astrology, and to not only guide myself through, this past year that was really transformational for all of us, but to also help guide my students through that as well. I'm also a massage therapist and a Reiki practitioner, so lots of hats that I wear.
Love it. Love it. That's great. Yeah, this this pandemic has really pushed especially the moms and having kids home. And as a mom that has one kid home, woman, I bow down to you with your three kids and running a business and just with everything that's going on and how so much is rising and bubbling and shifting. And how do we meet the rising and the bubbling and the shifting and let the ground move under our feet, let the wind blow us and just move with it instead of fighting it so much.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, when we resist is when we create suffering. And so I have this time, I think I really embraced and also encouraging everyone just embrace, like your inner tree pose, flow with the wind, but don't break.
I love that. Yeah, and I think it ties in. So I pulled a card this morning, which we haven't done yet for the podcast, but it was like, pull a card. We need to kind of, what is the energy of what we're all in collectively? And the card I pulled was the Nine of Swords, which, if you're not familiar with tarot and you're not watching on the video, it's an image of a woman sitting up in bed, kind of holding her head in despair. And on the wall behind her, she has these 9 swords. And swords in tarot represent our thoughts, and they're associated with the element of air and the mental realm. So there are all these negative thoughts and all of these, kind of doubts and fears that are on the wall behind her, stacked up with these 9 swords. And she can't sleep. She's having a really rough time. It's a tough card. And what it speaks to me of is the thoughts and the negative thoughts and the how that can really kind of take over, right? It's like this whole wall behind her. And instead of maybe taking a break, maybe getting up, maybe like going to get a drink of water, maybe calling a friend, maybe, when you're stuck sitting underneath those swords, those 9 swords, it can feel really overwhelming. And so I think that's part of what we are all in collectively. And then just to share as well, I pulled an advice card of, what to do with that. And I pulled the Emperor, which is, I think, a really great card for this because it's that leadership energy. It's structure, and yes, there's logic involved because it's the masculine, but it's from like a different perspective, right? Like this emperor is sitting on a throne, like very, kind of put together as an emperor would be. And yes, of course, I'm sure the emperor has some times where it's like despair in the bed, like the Nine of Swords, but it's a reminder to when you're in that, leadership energy, or you're in that kind of, passion is also a piece that comes with the emperor, that there's a different energy there. It's almost like taking a step back. And I think, that is, and I'm not an expert on tarot at all. So if you're listening to this and you know more about tarot, like, it may mean even more to you. But those are the pieces that I'm taking. And I think it really speaks to what we're in collectively. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And, I love that. So the emperor has a very mature essence about him, right? And how does one become mature? Through those life experiences that create a lot of anxiety, a lot of frustrations, right? Like when I speak with my clients, I always say, we didn't come here to go on the merry-go-round, right? Like if Earth is the playground, we came here to go on like the biggest badass roller coaster there is. And so to get that maturity, you have to have that experience. So how many times can you get into your head, get into turmoil, and actually bring yourself out of it? Or like, to your point, to know, hey, I need some help. I need to reach out to someone to help me guide my way out of here, or lead, or be the light to shine on. So I love that both of those cards came out together. I think they speak volumes that we're kind of heading into that space. As a collective, we're maturing, right? We're all kind of taking the discomfort that we've been in, and we realize life is always going to be uncomfortable, right? It's never going to be free of distractions, or like in yoga, suffering is optional. It's all on your perception. Your perception is your reality. And so we're living amongst these two worlds of you're a spirit being having a human experience, right? This body is just a vehicle to bring us through. And most of us have had lifetimes and lifetimes of maturing, and it's just part of the evolution of the collective consciousness. And so I love it. I think that it's a great, I think you pull out the Nine of Cards and it's like, eek, but followed by the Emperor, it feels really good.
Yeah, so I think we need an advice card. And to emphasize that piece too of like the asking for help, like the Emperor, I would imagine any person in leadership, there's a whole team. There's a whole team of people. Mm-hmm. So also that feels important of, that Nine of Swords place of being in despair, like reaching out to somebody, because that's what the Emperor would do too, right? The Emperor has its advisors and it has its people. Like the Emperor may not be a specialist in all the things, but it knows, oh, I have this person I can go to for this. I have this person I can go to for this other thing. And that feels like an important reminder as well, that we don't have to do it all.
Mm-hmm. It really does. The piece that's landing for me with the Nine of Swords is the air connection and how each sword represents an idea. The element of air is thought and ideas. And can we move to a place where we're using those swords to cut through that which doesn't work, and that then provides us the freedom to actually step into being a leader who is of service? We have a messy collective idea that leaders are to be worshiped, that royalty is this and this and that. And when really royalty and leaders, they're here as in acts of service. They are not to be lifted up and revered. They are here to move and hold out their hands and say, what can I do to raise you above me? Mm-hmm. And those swords hanging on the wall, at what point are we going to take down those rusty swords, those rusty ideas? You know, here in the United States, living in Minnesota with the trial that just like, when are we going to take down the rusty ideas of systemic racism? We have an airborne pandemic, like airborne people. The connection here between an airborne virus and how it is time to break down our ideas and actually bring into right now what serves right now. I had a great conversation with a client yesterday. We were laughing about something about how both simultaneously small and unimportant we are, and how huge and valuable we each are. And he or I made a comment about, you know, like there's a good reason that we haven't had any extraterrestrial outer space contact, is because they look at us and they're like, they can't handle people who look different from them. They wouldn't know what to do with something bigger. Our ideas are small and rusted and hung up on the wall in a stack of swords. And if we can take those swords off the wall and let this pressure cooker that we're in clean those swords, we might find some ideas worth using.
Yeah.
And that can move into a leadership role.
Yeah. What's coming up as you're speaking is today, as we're recording this, we have the Sun conjunct Uranus. And it feels like, because it's also squaring Saturn. So Saturn and Uranus is the aspect that we have for the whole year. It's kind of the old versus the new. It's the old thought versus the new thought. It's definitely about Uranus is like, let's think in a way that we've never thought before. And so the sun illuminating that today feels like, as you were speaking, I was like, okay, this feels definitely like this aspect of, you know, we've been in this, and the Saturn Uranus square hit exact for the first time in February. We're going to be in an all year. It's going to hit its middle point in June, but we're getting these activations right now where I think we're all feeling like we're getting pushed a little bit. And it's because there's this edge that we're kind of on the edge of, that Uranus is asking us to kind of like look over and and take the leap. And so I feel like that's what we're in, while it's all squaring Saturn, who Saturn can also be, you know, beautiful in that he helps us bring things into reality. It's not just the thinking bigger and just the like expansive thought. It's Saturn's there to be like, okay, and how are we going to do it? But there's also a lot of pushing up against the old, because Saturn can also be the old, right? Like we talk about this all the time. With every archetype, there is a shadow and an aligned side. So of course, we're going to be seeing all of it, but kind of that higher, the higher octave of what is possible is stepping into the new in a way that we can't even imagine. And that's kind of what we're in. So literally today, we have that aspect of the sun illuminating Uranus. And we've been in it, especially with this last full moon in Scorpio, especially we're moving into eclipse season. So like when you were talking about like the roller coaster, like, yeah, it feels like, okay, like let's get on the part of the roller coaster where it gets a little, a little windy, a little like spin you upside down a little bit. And it does feel like we're kind of in the upside down like place right now.
We're upside down and we're hanging, like the roller coaster got stuck and we're like, help. I saw or heard once the greatest explanation that Saturn's like your business like friend and Uranus is like your hippy dippy woo woo, right? And they're kind of doing this aspect together. I also saw a great meme, Amy, when you were talking, that was like, when aliens drive by Earth, they roll up the window and lock the doors.
Pretty much.
Like, don't make contact with the don't look. It is a time, right, where we are shedding. Like, I keep getting the visual of the snake shedding this old skin of, and it can be uncomfortable. Think about, when you are actually shedding skin, it is very uncomfortable. And we kind of start to, we always resist change, right? Because the ego doesn't know it. The ego can't look back and use past experiences to compare and make sense. So it's very natural, I feel right now, and should be embraced as we're moving through timelines and we're healing our own stuff. Whether there's people that are healing things that they don't even realize that they're healing, right? They're having these breakthroughs. And it's pretty cool, if you're working one-on-one with someone and you see them have those aha moments, right? And you go back and look in your notes and you're like, I knew this was coming, right? Like, this is what you needed. And as we're all kind of doing that, right, there is this unknown, right? We would love to know what's coming next, right? We would love to know how things are going to make us feel and affect us and whatever. And we kind of do as we look out into the cosmos, right? This is where we get to learn and educate ourselves on what's happening out in the cosmos, and then to use that energy to influence us, so that when we get into the bumpier parts of the roller coaster, or we're, when it's stuck and we're hanging upside down, we know that it's not forever. And right, we know that it's also divinely guided. It's for our best good. Everything that's happening right this time of lockdown and COVID and all of the things that are happening outside of us with, and even Pluto retrograde, meant to shake things up.
Oh, Amanda, I love that. The shake things up, and the remembering, like, the holding the perspective that I may be crawling through, the mud on my belly. I may be hanging upside down in the roller coaster, and I can't see what's coming. And I can trust that it's for my highest good. I can trust that this moment is asking more of me. Number one, because there is more of me to offer. There's more of me. There's depths of me that I didn't know. And yes, I agree with you, working with clients one-on-one. And Alexis, you may have something to say about this also. Working with clients one-on-one and seeing them have these breakthroughs that you're like, I knew this was coming. You did it. Is magical, because we get to watch the process of the pressing of the coal into a diamond. We get to watch the process of the steel being put into a forge and coming out a honed blade. And that is so precious to watch people shift their perspectives, and in shifting their perspectives, actually claim pieces of themselves.
Yeah.
Like the not only the shedding of the skin, but being like, ooh, look at how pretty these scales are. I got pretty scales.
Like a mermaid.
I'm like a mermaid.
and growth happens when we're uncomfortable, right? I mean, you can think about, we're birthing a new world. We're birthing a new reality. And so, the birth, the labor, the birth, everything has to kind of constrict and get really tight and uncomfortable before it expands. And I think that we feel that a lot. So, you're either heading into a storm, you're in a storm, or you're heading out of a storm. So if you're hanging upside down, right, if you're uncomfortable, you know that at some point, that's not forever, right? Everything cycles. So you're going to be heading out of that at some point. So what can you do while you're hanging upside down? What breathing techniques can you do to ease the discomfort? And it really is so amazing when our breath is such a huge guide as to how we're doing. I invite my students throughout the whole day, just randomly put an alarm on your phone. Where am I breathing? Am I using the full capacity of my lungs, or am I restricting the breath to the upper chest? When you breathe right here, you create a lot of feelings of anxiety and depression, and physically you pull down on those traps and those shoulders. You round everything in and you close the heart chakra off. So very difficult to allow love to flow through. Now imagine you're breathing right here, right? And then somebody cuts you off. Your response is going to be of a very defensive nature, or you read a headline on the news, or whatever, and you're going to restrict even more. And if we can just open up a little bit and say, ooh, where's my breath? Take a deep breath, unclench your jaw, right? Like soften all the spaces in your physical body and allow things to flow through you. That's probably the best tool that we have during these really constricting times, is where do I feel tight and where can I kind of lean into that and create some space and acceptance.
Yeah, I love that, because I think, yeah, sometimes when we're in that upside down place, it's, oh my God, how do I get out of this? Like, right. It's all of that, rather than kind of surrendering into it. Like, okay, like we're going to be stuck here for a little bit. Let me breathe. And the image I'm getting is from tarot, again, the Hanged Man, which it's an image of this person like hanging upside down. They're tied by their foot, but if you look at their face, they're like happy, and they're in this surrendered, like they have this like halo around their head. They're just like, okay, I'm here. And it's not a struggle, which is interesting because it speaks to that surrender piece and the trust piece of not trying to just get out of it, and not just trying to get to the next thing and just wanting it to be over. It's almost going deeper, right? It's like, this is what's coming up. It's coming up for a reason. I'm upside down for a reason. Well, I might as well like take a look at things from this perspective and surrender. Yeah.
It's about seeing things from a new perspective. What can I learn? And what can I learn? We're in such diverse times. Can I actually see things through the other person's eyes? Maybe someone that I don't even agree with, or that my views, my opinions, I did that big time during the election. So I really was so mindful I want to see everybody's point of view, right? I would love to sit with two opposite, polarities, opposite ends of the spectrums, opposite belief, whatever, and just have a conversation. Unfortunately, you try to get the conversation going and gets a little defensive, right? Don't forget to breathe.
Well, and this huge crow just flew by my window. I've never had a crow fly this close to my window. And in shamanism, the crow is the bringer of universal truth. So I love that you're talking about, like, how do we come from a place of not defensiveness, and we work to see greater perspectives, more perspectives than just ours, because those are the steps that we need to take to find the universal truth. So you're talking about this in this crow, like I thought he was going to hit the window. It was so close. This truth bringer, this shamanic universal bringer of truth, and moving from a place of, you hear people get into it with their polarized, this is my side, and they say things like, well, the truth is, rather than a truth, or I believe, for me. So how do we invite a change of languaging? Even if it's, being really aware that for me, this is my truth. And I respect your truth, and it's different than mine, and that's okay. Can we explore it together? Because I really may want to understand, and I don't want to necessarily change you to my truth, but it would do me good, because what serves one really serves all.
Yeah. And what's also coming up is this idea of, just because we believe something, like how tightly are we holding on to that? Because things can change, right? Like I think there are very few like divine truths, right? Like there's a few that I like have not changed for me. But for the most part, I think this is an invitation right now as well of, you know, where can we look at some old beliefs and where can we kind of let go? Like maybe those aren't really ours. And that's the invitation as well of, you know, something that we might get if it's like if we've been kind of stuck in something, it's probably there for a reason, and most likely because we're in this Saturn Uranus square for the year, it's with the invitation to change. And you don't have to throw it out completely, but maybe the, you know, you can ask the question of, this keeps coming up, how can I shift it? What is the new belief here? What do I want to believe? And knowing that that can change too. I think we hold on really tightly to wanting, you know, to be right and wanting to, right, like, you know, we just hold on so tightly that if we can just let go of that, and maybe we're wrong. Maybe we're wrong.
And the
And it's
world is
okay.
not going to end. Exactly. Yeah, it's okay. Nothing's
It's
going to
okay to
end.
be right. Yeah, I know that when I first started on my, you know, spiritual path or journey or, you know, whatever, uh, it was one of the, I think the biggest kind of advancements, I guess, that I felt was that it's okay for things to shift and for things to evolve, and for what I once, like, we should all give ourselves permission that what we once thought was truth can actually change. And it's so right, that's where we get like the closed minded of like, I won't even see this other person's point of view, because I'm so defensive about, right, and why, right, and then you can get into the psychology of it. Why am I so defensive? Because I'm actually, there's a fear that I could be wrong, and then that, right, so I have to defend it even more. So when I'm having conversations with someone and they're really defensive, I know there's a lot of fear. There's probably a lot of learned or taught fear, right? I mean, I'm loving I do a lot of inner child work in an 8-week workshop that I offer. And so a lot that I take is what we were taught from our parents, what their parents taught them. And we truly are this generation in this time to change that up. Even, I mean, you know, when having kids is a great way to reparent your own inner child, but you don't need kids to reparent your own inner child. And it's amazing to see what right, like what was the saying, like children should be seen and not heard. How much trauma comes from that, right? And so our world, the world that it's kind of like a hologram, right? Like the world that we are experiencing on the inside is what we're going to create on the outside. So can you imagine for just a second if everybody was coming from a healed space of love? Things would feel and look a lot. We're always going to have polarities. We're always going to have opposite ends of the spectrum. What, you know, that song, oh gosh, I'm slipping me, you know, everybody, if everybody's wrong, then nobody can be right, or whatever it is, right? Like how can anybody be right if we're all wrong, right? If I'm saying you're wrong, if you're saying I'm wrong, so what is truth? What is right? Well, it is based on where am I coming from? So if you're coming from this place of wholeness, of love, of even compassion for the person that you don't agree with, right? If you can view someone with that they are still a connection to source, they are still source, God, you know, universe, whatever word you like to use to label it, in that form, and they're living out whatever their purpose is. And you can still have compassion, especially for those that have really tried to hurt us. How untouchable are you in that moment, in that space of, I can still have compassion and love for you and what you're going through, right? Also set up a big boundary with those swords, right? I'm not going to let you come at me, but I'm also going to see that, you know, you're suffering, and and maybe what I like to do, like if I feel like, you know, I see an attack somewhere, Tonglen meditation, take in the suffering of all and put out the happiness for all, right? Like, so it's almost like when we feel powerless, and we might feel really powerless during Pluto retrograde, it does give you that sense of, okay, well, I still am empowered. I can still take this negative experience, the negativity, the suffering that I'm seeing, right? So maybe you get really triggered if you see the homeless, right? Maybe I can take in that energy of homelessness and put out a home for everyone, or security, or peace, or comfort, or whatever it is. It's just a great way for us, again, and to do that inner work. Why am I so triggered about someone being homeless, right? What am I so afraid that I'm going to lose my own comfort, my own security, my own, and do that work? Where does that fear come from? A lot of the times, right, as we start kind of digging into the layers, we find the stuff that we're carrying isn't even ours. We've been taught it. We've been taught to fear it. We've been, right? It's this generation that has come and come and come. And then it gets to us and it's like, oh, actually that can transmute now. That can be a different energy. It doesn't need to keep repeating that same cycle. I get, right? Like we switch the direction of how it spins, I guess.
Amanda, yeah, and that speaks to Pluto is about transformation. Retrograde is like bringing it inside, do a review. What do we want to transform? And now is a really good time to learn to surf that.
Love that. Surf it. Ride the wave.
Ride the wave. You're going to get swamped at times because sometimes the wave just takes you out. And it's going to plunge you in deeper. And you're going to be like, whoa, there is a lot of stuff down here. I didn't know that was down here. And do I want to bring this, like, let's bring this to the surface and let's look at it and decide, like, is this how I want to continue to create the hologram of my life? You know, I come from a Toltec lineage, and it is the artistry. Like, we are all artists. And the world that we live in is actually a projection of our inner world. So I love that you brought that hologram piece in while we're playing with Pluto in retrograde, because how do we change our hologram? How do we work and do the inner work? How do we bring it back here? Bring it back here, bring it back here, bring it back here.
Yep. Yeah. And so Pluto will be retrograde for a while. So Pluto just went retrograde in April and will be there through October. So he'll be in retrograde. So he's an outer planet. So his retrogrades are longer. And there are times when we'll feel it, right? So when he stations, like when he turned retrograde, we feel it. When there are certain aspects, it'll highlight things. So this week, we have on May 2nd, Mercury trine Pluto. And then on the 6th, we have Venus trine Pluto. So basically, Mercury and Venus will be aspecting Pluto as they move out of Taurus. And so those are times when Mercury, our thoughts, right? And we've been talking a lot about, we had the 9 of Swords, right? So we've been talking a lot about our thoughts. And I have a feeling that, we're already in that energy, right? Like they're already in that aspect. It'll just hit exact on May 2nd. That the way, how can we transform our thoughts, really? And then with Venus is also our values and our self-worth. And it, if it's retrograde, it's all looking within. Yes, it can be definitely relationships, which are, can show us things about ourselves for sure, any relationship. Because Venus can be a lot about relationships. But yeah, we're going to have more of that emphasis on going deeper over this next week.
I love it. And what can we do, right? Like, what can we do when we get caught up? Well, the first thing you can do is check in with your breath, right? And we know that we can expand there. We can also remind ourselves that we're in a constant state of flux and change. And also, what is this teaching me? When you get triggered, right? When we give our power away, when we get defensive, where can I tap into my third eye? Where can I find the wisdom in whatever this experience is, right? And or you can take it a step further, go through all the chakras, right? Like what does this teach me about my tribe security? What does this teach me about relationships? What does this teach me about willpower? Where can I soften my heart? Where can I speak my truth? Where can I find the wisdom? Where can I have faith and show that on the outside that it's divinely guided, right? I can use the example of when I lost my yoga studio. That was something that I had worked so hard for, and a dream of mine for since I was a teenager. And then to have COVID hit and have to make the very emotional decision that to close that down and to move virtual. And right, I could have, oh, woe is me, the world sucks, this is terrible. I could have gotten angry. I could have joined, right, other people's truths with whatever it was around the virus. Or I could have seen, well, actually, this virus is really teaching us a lot. What is it attacking? Our respiratory system. What's our respiratory? Where is it out in the collective? Look at the rainforest, look at nature, right? Like this is teaching, this is such a teaching opportunity. So you can take anything, right? Anything that comes up, and what is it teaching me? How can I take this experience, take that and kind of grind it, right? Be uncomfortable with it, and then present the diamond that comes out of it. And we get to choose that. Someone can cut you off, right? At the grocery store, if people even still go to the grocery store. I do delivery now. There are a lot of good things that came out from this time, and having my groceries delivered to me and not taking 3 kids to the grocery store is definitely one of them. Perception is everything.
It's got to be magical. 1 kid at the grocery store with a gimmies is plenty. 3? Oh, woman.
Where those martinis come in.
Yep, that's when the martinis come in. This perception, this how are we moving? What are the gifts in this? In Eastern medicine, the lungs are grief. How much collective grief are we holding? And not just, I can say here in the United States, because the 3 of us are all in the US, but globally, like there is a tremendous amount of grief because we have stopped actually being willing to feel it. It's like there's this range of people are like, oh, well, that's a bad emotion. I was like, what do you mean a bad emotion? Like they're messengers. They're just here to give you information, and you can choose to perceive it as, oh, well, that's bad news. Or you can choose to perceive it as, oh, my heart, like I just need to sit and hold this and allow it to run through me. It was my dog had surgery on Tuesday. And one of the questions, whether you are getting your dog, whether your dog's having surgery, or whether you're having surgery, that they ask is, if there's cardiac arrest, do you want us to do CPR? And even though my head knew this question was coming, when the surgical tech asked, I promptly burst out in tears, and I'm like breathing, and I'm like, what is right? And I'm like, yes, like she's 5 years old. There's no reason for her to go into cardiac arrest, and giving my time to sit with even the potential of my work partner, like dying on the OR table. Like as I'm crying, and my 10-year-old is like, if my dog dies, I'll sue you. And I was like, that's not how we do things. Like wherever you got that from, that is not how this person does things.
That's a learned behavior.
Exactly. And I was like, where did you ever hear that? And he wasn't going to talk to me about it.
Yeah,
he knew, and I knew he knew I knew. Because he wasn't ready to sit with the potential grief. It hurt too much. It was too big. And then throw in the fact that mom's sitting in the chair crying. Because I'm willing to be like, I'm going to cry my way through this until I can give her an answer. And that's what it is can we allow ourselves the 90 seconds it takes for the chemical piece of our emotions to move through our physical systems. It's 90 seconds to 2 minutes for the chemical pathway of our emotional messengers to be like, hey, yo, it's like John, Paul Revere, right? Paul Revere. I was going to say John Revere. Paul Revere, like, the British are coming. He's just a messenger. The messenger, the emotion is riding through and delivering the message. This hurts. This is scary. And just being like, okay, I'm scared right now. I'm sad right now. And our unwillingness to be like with pure fear and just let it run means that we have this like really messy fear that moves from a place of aggression, because messy fear is aggressive fear. The pure fear is the fear you see in a child that runs to mom or curls up in bed and hides. That's pure fear. Messy fear is what we're working with now. And that's the, I'm going to lash out at you. And so can we shift that lashing out and bringing it in? What am I really scared of? What am I really feeling? How am I perceiving this situation that's got me like my hair standing on end?
And that's the beauty with anything that triggers you. Like, that's why I love triggers. I think they're great because they show you exactly what you need to pay attention to, and you have the choice to react, right? And to, like, be in that blame or be in that, like, reactive place. You also have the choice to run away from it and to ignore it, which then it just simmers and then it's going to come back again. So, you can do that. And it's all where we're at. Like, it's all perfect, no judgment until, like, what, wherever you are. And you also have the choice to kind of face it and be like, okay, it's almost like, I imagine, like, taking a step back, right? And like taking those breaths, taking those, few seconds up to however long you need. And sometimes, and saying that, being like, I just need a minute, right? Like, how often do we just react? Because that's also I haven't been in too many situations where it's like, I need a minute. But how much better would it be if we all just took a minute before going right in? And I think that's the invitation of, like, here's the thing, here's the trigger, here's the scary thing, here's whatever is coming up. What are you going to do with it now? Right. And maybe it is run away for a little while. Like, that's okay. But I almost see the running away as one option, but the taking a step back is another. So I think that's the kind of, rather than running away and just like hiding, it's the take a step back. And from that place, take a few breaths, take your 90 seconds, and then come back at it. Because you'll get what's there, right? You'll be able to see it. And it might take a little while, it might take longer, but you're going to start getting there. Because if you run away, it's going to come back. And if you're in that reactive place, that's not going to feel good for anybody involved. And yeah, that's why I love triggers. They're great.
They are. And you're right. You get a choice and you get to see, am I coming from a distorted masculine energy in my reaction to this? We see that a lot out in the collective, right? A knee-jerk reaction is typically distorted masculine energy versus divine masculine energy. And I do have to say, when I say often to my children, I need to take a minute, and they're going to have a completely skewed idea of what time is, because a minute is usually like 10 to 15 minutes. But then I tell them, time and space is an illusion. So go off to school and learn correct time, whatever. The other thing that comes up too, as you guys are talking, is the attachment that we have, right? The attachment that we have to the outcome. I want my dog to be okay because I'm attached. I'm not ready to let my dog go, or I'm attached to whatever it is. The Buddha, and I'm totally going to paraphrase this, said, so say you have a vase that you love, right? It's this beautiful vase. Maybe it was like something in your family for a long time. and it sits on your fireplace. And if you know that someday that vase is going to fall and break or change in some way, if you already practice that that is going to happen, every time that you look at that vase, you come from a place of gratitude and appreciation. And the day, if and when the vase does fall and break, there's no attachment there. You already knew that it was going to happen. I have a client who I love dearly, and she is her first husband passed from cancer. She was remarried, and now her second husband is going through cancer and is passing. He's transitioning, and we speak a lot of that, right? So there's good days, there's bad days, there's that attachment, there's that fear, right? Like, so when you have those days where I'm so afraid he's going to pass, that is going to happen, right? So, so make peace with that, sit with that. It's very uncomfortable. And then be in this present moment. He's still here. So be in that moment and enjoy whatever it is, knowing, right, that everything is going to, right, and the end is never the end, right? That's a great thing about mediumship. They get to still become part of your guides, and they still communicate with us in all different ways. So there is no ever, right? We have this attachment because we're afraid something's going to end. Nothing ever really ends though, right? Energy can't be created or destroyed. It just changes form. And that's where we have that acceptance that, where am I coming from? And we all have masculine and feminine energy within us. So in this situation, what is the driving force? What's coming out of me? Is it wounded woman? Is it distorted masculine? Is it divine masculine? Is it, right? What is it? What is it? A trigger, right? What is it teaching me? What's it telling me? What do I need? Maybe I do need to step back and take a minute. Maybe I do need to run for a little bit and not face what this thing is head on. Maybe I need to avoid it. And then what am I going to learn from avoiding? Maybe you need to avoid something to learn, avoiding isn't going to do much, but buy me, or rob me of time. Which one? And you get to decide, right? So somebody that turns from something can either see it as, I'm buying time or I'm losing time. It's all on how whole of a being are you coming at this, right? And sometimes you need to take a minute and call all the pieces of yourself to be a whole being, to address with whatever is at hand. And I think we could all have compassion when we see others outside of us that are really struggling, no matter what they're struggling with. It doesn't, whether we agree with their struggle or not, we can have that compassion that they're grasping at straws, or that they're not coming from a whole place, or, or whatever it is. We know the times that we haven't been whole, and we have struggled, and we have suffered. And how good would that have felt for someone, especially someone that, right, might not agree with us, to show us compassion. We see it a lot right now. Women are really coming together. We were taught that very distorted masculine to kind of compete with each other. It's an old patriarchal structure that is just absolutely crumbling. And we've spoken before, right? It's boots to the ground time. We are collaborating. We are coming together. Think about how good it feels when women are supporting other women. I mean, it's like magical, right? Like, it is a force not to be reckoned with. And we're doing that, right? We're moving into that space. And by doing that, we're able to view through the soul eyes versus human eyes. Right? No longer the ego, it's through the soul, through the divine connection, through source, God, whatever word you like to use.
I love that.
Juicy.
We're just over here in the juicy goodness that Amanda is bringing.
Dropping knowledge.
That big love place.
Yeah, it's just so good. So is there any other things that anyone wants to drop in? I know, Amanda, your website is going to be in the show notes for anyone that wants to look up Amanda. You can also find her on Instagram, which I can put that in the show notes also. Any other goodness, women? Any other final words of?
We touched on so much goodness. I think just a reminder that we have eclipse season is coming. So end of May and June, we're going to have our 2 eclipses, which are the first eclipses of 2021. So just know that we're in a couple months of this, right? So really like embrace being on the upside down part of the ride. Embrace when you're like, in a hole. Embrace when you're at the high. Like we're going to be in just, a few months of this. So just a reminder, eclipse season is really fun. And we're just
Find your breath, find your joy, find how interconnected they are. Sit with your grief, hold your kids, reach out and take someone's hand. Just what small acts can each of us bring to the world, because it is small acts of love and small acts of compassion that are going to create the shift that I know I, as a mama, would love to see for my kids
Yeah.
and
you
for all
can
the kids that I love.
start with you,
Mhm.
right? That's where we like, what can I bring out to the world? And also, you can never pour from an empty cup, right?
Yeah.
So how can I fill myself? How can I feel whole and good and happiness, right? And sometimes that is honoring, I'm in that part of my cycle where I just need to rest, or I just need to cry, or I need to just sit with my grief that I've stuffed down so deep with Pluto right now. It's the cap is off. Allow it to move, to come out. And then what can I learn? And then, where can I take that experience, that discomfort where I showed my self-love? It's really like, when you think about it, it's a pretty simple, if we could start loving ourselves more, think about how much love we're going to project out. If we can all truly remember, oh yeah, I'm a spirit having a human experience. I've never been separated from source or God, or whatever word you like to use. I'm here having this human experience. How am I enjoying it? Can I take the hanged man approach and just see things from a different perspective? Life's going to always throw curveballs. Put your glove on, get in out and outfield, figure it out, right? Enjoy the sun, make the best of it.
Totally. Yeah. And I think that's one of those divine truths, is that we forget that we aren't separate. For me, that has never changed. That it's when I'm separated and I forget that I'm either connected to soul or the divine, that I create suffering, right? So that for me is one of those truths that has not changed, that I, believe is a truth of the separation creates the suffering. And so remembering, however it is that you remember, that's going to be the thing, just connecting into that place, whether it's through meditation, whether it's through yoga, whether it's through, sometimes through a conversation, right? Through this conversation, it's like, oh yeah, right, we're all on the same page. Okay, great, right? That helps to connect to that place. So it's that.
I love that. That's a perfect note to end on.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, women, for this amazing conversation. Thank you for everyone that has listened. Please subscribe to Rooted Cosmic Wisdom. Leave us 5 stars, a review, share us with your friends, and we will talk to you soon. Thanks for journeying with us.